Why do I keep pushing things to Monday on Fridays? By Friday afternoon, you're still working, but the texture of the day has changed. You're answering messages, you're present, you're not disengaged, but anything that isn't actively demanding your attention starts sliding forward in your mind. Not dramatically, quietly, almost politely. You look at a task and think, I'll handle this fresh on Monday. Not as avoidance, as logic, as care, as the reasonable choice. That thought feels clean. It feels responsible. It even feels strategic. That's the tell. Earlier in the week, unfinished things feel loud. They follow you. They create a low-grade pressure that keeps pulling you back. Leaving something open feels unfinished in a way that's hard to ignore. By Friday, that pressure has softened. The same task doesn't feel unfinished anymore. It feels parked, contained, temporarily handled. Nothing broke. You didn't lose discipline, and this isn't about being tired. What changed is how the future feels. On Monday, the future feels close. If something slips, it's right there with you all week. There's time for it to ripple. That proximity makes finishing feel necessary. It gives decisions weight. By Friday, the future feels further away. The week is almost over. There's a natural edge forming, and distance has a strange effect on judgment. When consequences feel farther away, delays start to feel cheaper. Not free, just affordable. You can see this shift in how you behave, even if you don't consciously name it. You stop fully closing loops. Instead of finishing, you leave yourself notes. You send messages that keep things moving but don't land them. You soften language. You avoid finality. You tell yourself you're being thoughtful by not making big decisions late in the day, and that's partially true. But it's not the whole story. Friday creates a psychological exit ramp. Once that exit feels available, your mind starts reorganizing priorities without asking you. Tasks quietly get sorted into two categories. Things that absolutely must happen before I stop, and everything else. The second category doesn't feel neglected, it feels deferred. And deferral feels safe because Monday is waiting on the other side. Monday becomes a container for seriousness. So when something feels slightly heavy, slightly complex, slightly binding, it gets pushed forward. Not because you can't do it now, but because Monday feels like the proper place for things that matter. Most people misread this shift. They think they're procrastinating. They assume they're checking out early, but if that were true, you'd feel detached. You'd stop responding. You'd mentally disappear. That's not what's happening. You're still engaged and you still care. You're just no longer being pulled towards closure in the same way. That's why Fridays generate so much carryover without obvious failure. It's not big mistakes, it's residue. Half-finished decisions, open loops, things that don't feel urgent enough to close, but still matter enough to remember. And that's where the cost shows up later. When you push too much to Monday, Monday doesn't feel fresh. It feels preloaded. You don't start the week by moving forward. You start it by cleaning up. The very pressure you were trying to avoid on Friday gets compressed into the beginning of the next week. What felt like relief becomes congestion. The fix isn't to grind late on Fridays. It isn't to force yourself into artificial urgency. And it isn't to shame yourself for a very human response to the end of a cycle. The cleaner move is intentional closure. One thing you fully finish before you stop. Not everything, just one. One decision you don't defer. One task you bring to an actual end instead of setting aside. Not because it's the most urgent, but because it's still yours to close. That single act changes the handoff between weeks. It signals to your mind that Friday isn't a slow leak. It's a boundary. Something ends here. Something doesn't get carried just because it can be. When that boundary exists, The weekend feels cleaner, and Monday feels lighter. Not because there's less to do, but because you're not inheriting unfinished weight from a day that never really ended. So if you keep pushing things to Monday on Fridays, understand this. You're not lazy. You're not avoiding work. You're responding to an exit that your mind detects before you consciously do. And when you choose one clean close before you take it, Monday stops inheriting Friday's leftovers. This is Fish Motivates. Take what matters, leave the rest behind.